After 2 incredible seasons filled with critical acclaim, award wins, and millions of hours streamed, Arcane has come to a close, and what a banger finale it delivered. The wildly popular Netflix series wrapped up with an emotionally charged ending that was as stunning as it was bittersweet. As the credits roll on one of Netflix's greatest shows, and the dust settles on this animated masterpiece, it's not hard to sit in awe of what Arcane has achieved. But if you are anything like me, you're probably left with more questions than answers after that heart-wrenching conclusion. So as I process the feels and fight back a few tears, grab your tissue boxes cause we're about to dive into it together. But fair warning, there will be full spoilers ahead for the entirety of Arcane's 3-parted finale, so stay at your own risk. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Episode 7, Where Were Echo and Heimerdinger All Along? Episode 7 of Arcane fully focused on Jace, Echo, and Heimerdinger, as they navigated 2 different alternate realities. As it turns out, there are 3 alternate dimensions in this world, the one we know, 1 dystopian dimension that Jace was sent to, and finally a utopian version where Echo and Heimerdinger ended up. After being pulled into that dimension by the Wild Rune, Echo and Heimerdinger find themselves in a world where Vi is dead. In this alternate timeline, things took a tragic turn when that version of Echo tipped off Vi, Powder, Clagger, and Milo about a gemstone hidden in Jace's apartment. Unfortunately, the gemstone exploded, leading to Vi's death. But in the original timeline, as you might recall, Echo tipped off Vi and her crew about Jace's apartment being loaded with valuable items they could steal and sell. While they did trigger an explosion when they messed with the gemstone they found, no one was hurt, and the events that followed, well, they became history. However, in the alternate reality, which I think is actually the utopian version, everything unfolded differently. After the explosion, and with Vi's death as the catalyst, research into gemstones and hex tech was completely abandoned. This led to a radically different world where Powder, Clagger, and Milo all grew up to be calm and level-headed. Not just that, in this universe, Vander and Silco chose to forgive one another over their bitter feud, and Benzo was still alive. And more shockingly, Piltover and Zahn were united in peace. Now, this perfect world understandably left Echo feeling conflicted and overwhelmed. He stood within an Undercity that he had always dreamed of, united and in peace, without any bloodshed or the invention of Hextech. In this reality, he and Powder were together. Everything was so perfect that he began having distorted visions and meltdowns. Thankfully, Heimerdinger from his original reality showed up, giving Echo someone to confide in about his emotions, something he couldn't fully express to his alternate reality friends. It seems the anomaly had thrown Echo and Heimerdinger into an alternate universe, dislodging them from their reality and sending them spiraling through time. While Echo had only just regained consciousness in this strange new world, Heimerdinger had been stuck there for a staggering 1,128 days, and all this time, he'd been patiently waiting for Echo to show up. But Echo was stunned when Heimerdinger revealed that he had accepted their situation, and was prepared to stay in the alternate reality. For Heimerdinger, it was a peaceful world, free from hextech and wild runes. Plus, without those tools or gems, there seemed to be no way back for them. But Echo simply couldn't bring himself to agree, so he searched the apartment where Vi had died, collecting every shard of the gemstone he could find. With these fragments in hand, Echo then persuaded Heimerdinger and Powder to use their skills to recreate the wild rune anomaly that had brought them there. After countless trial and error, they finally managed to create a smaller version of the anomaly, but it still wasn't enough for them to return to their reality. Although something was different, as it gave Echo the ability to rewind time by 4 seconds. However, pushing this time limit had dire consequences, because when they tried to go any further, Heimerdinger briefly exploded, thus foreshadowing his eventual demise. But Echo was able to reverse the damage and restore Heimerdinger with the help of his newly crafted time reversal device. While Heimerdinger focused on turning the small anomaly into a larger one to meet Echo's demands, Echo took a break to enjoy time with Powder and his alternate reality friends. As they danced and partied together, Echo savored every moment of this peace. Before returning to the lab, he took a bold step by confessing his romantic feelings to Powder, and to his relief, she felt the same. Both of them kissing and looking at one another with love was the only moment in all of Act 3 that'll make you go, aww. Now, with Heimerdinger having successfully amplified the anomaly's power, Echo was ready to return to his reality. But things didn't go as planned, because just as Heimerdinger pushed the anomaly to its limits, something went catastrophically wrong. I think he knew that he was about to die, because Heimerdinger leaves Echo to power up the anomaly, and in the process he turns to nothing, just like Sky. Maybe the little genius was erased from existence, or sucked into the Arcane itself, But what's certain is that Heimerdinger was gone. This triggered a bizarre chain reaction that separated the original Echo from his alternate reality counterpart, and in the process, the original Echo's consciousness ended up inhabiting the body of the alt-reality Echo. As Powder held on to this version of Echo, she briefly locked eyes with the original Echo's true self, which was a rather intense moment, charged with emotion and understanding. Then, in an instant, the anomaly sent the original Echo back to his reality with the time reversal machine in hand. Meanwhile, Jace found himself in a dystopian nightmare of Piltover and Zaun. As he wandered through the desolate ruins of this alternate reality, he spotted a hooded figure and followed them toward the remnants of the Hexgate Tower. It was unclear whether Jace believed he could use the gemstone or Hextech to return to his own reality, or if he thought his reality had somehow been transformed into this wasteland. Either way, he set off on a grueling journey to reach the tower. Jace assumed humanity had been wiped out, but he soon discovered terrifying zombie-like robots lurking everywhere. This twist was actually foreshadowed back in Act 2, during a flash frame in Jace's conversation with Salo. Oh, and remember wondering why Jace looked so much older between Acts 1 and 2? Well, this segment finally explains it. During his desperate attempt to escape the relentless robotic creatures, he fell into a deep ravine, severely injuring his leg. He spent many days inside the ravine, and while being trapped in the desolate wasteland, Jace realized that his only way out was to climb. To survive, he began eating the small critters he found in the dungeon, and used parts of his hex hammer to fashion a brace for his injured leg. But the wound had already begun festering, and started to show strange, glowing patterns, similar to the designs in the Hexgate's core, and the markings on Victor's body. Eventually, after regaining his strength, Jace climbed out of the pit and continued his journey toward the Arcane-ravaged tower. After reaching the top, he came face to face with a zombified version of himself, clutching the hex hammer, and at this moment it hit him hard that this alternate Jace had tried and failed to stop Victor from unleashing the Arcane on Piltover, leaving this world in ruins. Now that he understood the consequences of his invention, Jace knew he had to find a way back in order to prevent his world from meeting the same fate. Now, when the hooded figure reappeared, Jace recognized him as the mage who had given him the gemstone as a child and saved his mother. Seeing an opportunity to change things, Jace begged the mage to send him back to his reality. The mage led the alternate zombie Jace to release the hex hammer, triggering the wild rune anomaly that brought Jace to this world. Before stepping through, Jace promised to stop Victor at all costs, and back in his own reality, we saw in Act 2 that Jace made good on that promise by killing Victor. Unfortunately, his actions came with heavy consequences, setting off a chain of events that would ripple far beyond what he could have imagined. Episode 8. Victor finally begins his ultimate transformation, before chasing his glorious evolution dream. So Episode 8 of Arcane Season 2 kicks off with Mel Medarda finally escaping the grip of the Black Rose Order's sorceress while unlocking some of her own hidden powers in the process. The sorceress reveals that Mel is a unique kind of mage, an empath who can feel and influence the emotions of others, shaping their magic accordingly. Mel, who's curious to see the true face of the sorceress, demands to know who she really is. But when the sorceress partially reveals herself with an all-black appearance, Mel isn't satisfied, as she knew that even this form didn't reflect her true self. When the conversation turns to Kino, the sorceress reveals that apparently Ambessa had sacrificed him rather than seeking redemption for her past sins. This revelation is later confirmed by Ambessa herself, who admits that during her conflict with the Black Rose Order, she had to choose between Kino and Mel. She chose Mel, leaving Kino to die in the process. It didn't take long for Mel to realize that the sorceress was trying to manipulate her in order to recruit her into the Black Rose Order and turn her against Ambessa. The sorceress didn't even deny it, claiming that Ambessa's thirst for legacy would ultimately destroy Piltover, and only Mel had the power to stop her. The Black Sorceress then dropped a series of cryptic hints about the feud between Ambessa and the Black Order. She mentioned that Kino had uncovered some kind of secret about Ambessa, though what exactly that secret was remains unclear. Apparently, Mel's birth and course of life is no accident, and Ambessa hid her daughter for a reason, as she intended to use Mel's power as a weapon at the right time. With all these vague revelations hanging in the air, the sorceress gave Mel a necklace that sort of invisibly merged into her skin, and sent her off to Piltover to confront Ambessa. As Mel left, a three-eyed raven followed her, which is likely a reference to Swain from the League of Legends games. On the other hand, Ambessa was seen burying Rictus, while Singed worked to connect Warwick's lifeless body to the cocoon that Victor was trapped in. Contrary to what many believed, Victor wasn't actually dead. Not yet, at least. His consciousness was still alive, somewhere within the Arcane, and as long as Warwick's blood kept pumping into Victor's cocoon, he could communicate with Singed and Ambessa through the undead followers he created. Ironically, Victor referred to his process as an evolutionary step. Eventually, Victor shared his plans to use the anomaly in Hexgate's core to push his evolution to its final stage, but he was concerned that Jace would not let him go through with it. This is when the ever-ambitious Ambessa promised that her Noxian army would help fulfill Victor's desires, only if he agreed to share his gifts with them. Now, you should know that at this point, Victor had completely lost touch with his humanity, so in his relentless pursuit of perfection and uniformity, he and Ambessa struck a cold, almost businesslike agreement. With their alliance sealed, Victor began his mission to reshape Piltover into a nightmarish version of itself, much like the hellscape Jace had witnessed in the dystopian alternate reality. Meanwhile, Vi wakes up to find Loris keeping watch over her. Even though she was in rough shape, that's not the worst of it, as Jinx had been arrested, and Caitlyn is trying to figure out what to do next. But as it turns out, Jinx hadn't been arrested against her will. In fact, she had willingly surrendered to the Enforcers herself after getting Vi to safety. She was locked up in a bunker, as Caitlyn was unsure of her next move. Later, Caitlyn visits Jinx, telling her that there will be a trial to atone for her actions. As much as Kate despises what Jinx has done, she was too exhausted to hold on to her hatred. Jinx, in her own twisted way, apologizes for killing Caitlyn's mother, attempting to explain that she had no idea she was there when the tower came down. But her words feel like a hollow and futile attempt to justify the unthinkable to Caitlyn. Vi also tried to visit Jinx in the hopes of freeing her, but Jinx managed to escape, locking Vi in the cell in the process. Jinx assures her sister that she would never have to fight for her again. As Vi wallowed in her frustration and guilt, Caitlyn came to her rescue, and both of them got freaky with each other in those dungeons. Well, those two getting some was actually long overdue. The scene then shifts to the council room, where Jace reunited with Mel, and the weight of their reunion hit them both as they realized just how much they had changed. Sadly, what began as a bittersweet moment quickly turned into frustration, as old wounds resurfaced as former lovers began to argue. They bickered about their inability to regain control in the aftermath of the attack, each of them feeling the pressure of the chaos they couldn't manage. But their argument was suddenly cut short by the appearance of a strange robot-like creature. Though it wasn't just any machine, it was one of Victor's followers who was being controlled by Victor's consciousness. Apparently, those who had been touched by Victor still had some remnants of their humanity, but this moment proved that Victor's ultimate goal was to strip away their sentience and turn them into mindless machines. It was a grim reminder of how Victor's experiments blurred the lines between humanity and robotics. And as The World's End taught us, the word robot often carries connotations of slavery and control. Anyway, Jace didn't waste a lot of time thinking about what he should do and started attacking the robot in the hopes of killing Victor before he could get to the Hexgate's core. However, killing that robot was easier said than done. Even with the help of Mel's powers, it was impossible to match its speed. It was only after both Jace and Mel unleashed their full strength that they managed to incapacitate the robot and expel Victor's soul from that building. Following this heated confrontation, with Victor and Ambessa's threat looming large, Jace urgently called every council member from Piltover and all the Zonites to witness Victor's horrific creation. He begged every available hand to prepare for war, while others were instructed to evacuate Piltover through the Hex Gates. Luckily, many heeded the call, with both Piltover and Zon citizens joining the fight and making their stand near the Hexgate Tower. Meanwhile, Mel approached her mother Ambessa and begged her to leave Piltover in peace and return to Noxus. She even offered to join Ambessa in her pursuit of vengeance for Kino. But Ambessa's obsession was simply too deep, as she was determined to harness the full power of Hextech in order to level the playing field and face off against the Black Rose Order, or any other mage on her own terms. This drive even led her to team up with Singed and Victor to invade Piltover, seeking to integrate Hextech into her Noxian forces. By the end of Episode 8, Victor gave Singed the green light to fully inject the contents of Warwick's body into his cocoon. This ultimately caused Sky's soul to merge with Victor's, while Victor's followers were transformed into mindless robots. Not only that, Warwick's evolution also reached its next stage, and Victor's form changed, becoming something almost godlike, as his body absorbed Warwick's powers and everything Singed had injected into him. Episode 9. Who saves Piltover and Zon at the end? Episode 9 of Arcane Season 2 kicks off with Jinx attempting to end her life using one of her gemstone-powered bombs. Luckily, just as she was about to pull the pin, Echo, who by then had returned from the alternate dimension, arrived right on time to stop her. In order to get Jinx to change her mind, he had to use his time reversal machine multiple times, trying again and again to prevent her from making that final decision. In the original dimension, Echo had always cared for Jinx, and it hurt him to become her enemy. So after his brief romantic fling with Jinx in the alternate reality, he returned to his own world in the hopes of helping her find redemption instead of letting her destroy herself. Ultimately, Echo's repeated persistence paid off, as he managed to stop Jinx from committing suicide and convince her that they could build something meaningful together. Meanwhile, Jace gathers all the important members of the council to come up with a plan. He asks the enforcers to hold off the enemy long enough for him to shut down the Hex Gate, as this was their one shot at stopping everything. If he fails and Victor reaches the core, it's all over, and because it was a battle they're not supposed to win, they'll have to do everything they can to keep that from happening. The battle kicks off quickly, with the combined forces of Piltover and Zaun all suited up in Enforcer gear, doing their best to hold back Ambessa's army. But the general is leading the charge, effortlessly deflecting Caitlyn's hex-powered sniper shots. In her relentless thirst for power, Ambessa and her Noxian army brought Victor and his army of robots to Piltover. Also, he could activate the Arcane. But that wasn't all. She had Singed inject her Noxian soldiers with Shimmer, further fueling their strength, and to protect herself from any stray shots, Ambessa armed herself with every rune she could get her hands on. Eventually, things take a turn for the worse when Ambessa brings in more reinforcements from the docks, including the newly revived Warwick. Vi then teams up with the Enforcers, hoping to stop them, but the Shimmer-infected soldiers are overwhelming, and they can't keep up. It's not surprising that Ambessa quickly overpowers the group, leaving them at gunpoint. Plus, we find out that she had planted a spy within Caitlyn's squad, Maddie, who revealed her true allegiance at the perfect moment, by knocking Caitlyn out. And in a sneaky move, Ambessa pretended to bring Victor and the cocoon to the Hex Gates. But in reality, the cocoon was empty, and was just a diversion to keep Piltover's soldiers busy while Victor quietly made his way to the gemstone mesh at the heart of the Hex Gate. But the Noxians forgot to take Mel into consideration, who appeared at the right moment and used her magic to ricochet the bullet meant for Caitlyn and hit Maddie in the head, thereby killing her. Then Ambessa proceeded to engage in a 1v2 fight with Caitlyn and Mel. Now, the wild card in all of this is Jinx, who makes a dramatic entrance with Echo and the Firelights in a makeshift hot air balloon. They cause chaos and do their best to shift the momentum in Piltover's favor by knocking down a bunch of Noxian soldiers and Victor's robotic creations. Meanwhile, Victor is deep within the Hex Gate's core, where Jace waits for him. Jace desperately tries to reach out to his old friend, hoping there's still some humanity left in Victor, but Victor has other plans. He intended to take control of all his humanoid creations and wanted to unite humanity under a single mind, much like the Borg from Star Trek, promising a future that could be better but devoid of freedom. Given that he has seen the outcome of this vision, Jace knew that he had to stop this from becoming a reality. On the other hand, Caitlyn gets some unexpected help from Mel's magic, while Jinx and Vi face off against Warwick. Even though Caitlyn had to sacrifice her right eye to get the runes off Ambessa's wrist, it helped them break her defenses, giving Mel the opportunity to transport her mother to the Black Rose's realm. That said, while the Black Rose sorceress was busy monologuing to Ambessa by pulling her into what seems like their own version of hell, Mel shows up, realizing that the sorceress has her own hidden agenda. She then uses all her energy to kill the sorceress, or maybe banish her before bringing her mother back. However, Ambessa didn't survive the ordeal and perished in Mel's arms after congratulating her daughter on her wit and strength. In response, the Noxian soldiers raised their banner to announce Mel as the leader of Noxus. Now coming to the creators of the Hex Core, we learn that across all realities, Victor was born with a debilitating disease, while Jace had the opposite fortune, where he was healthy and strong. Despite their differences, both shared the same dream of unlocking the secrets of arcane magic and making it accessible to the masses, hoping to create a better world, maybe even a utopia. In every reality, Victor and Jace's paths diverged when Jace realized that using arcane magic and all the Hex Core related technology would only lead to death and chaos. Victor, on the other hand, became more obsessed with the idea of arcane magic, believing it could bring peace by turning everyone into a unified hive mind. The version of Victor who succeeded in this pursuit eventually realized that his vision of perfection wasn't all it was cracked up to be. His robots, while mechanically perfect, lacked individual thoughts and only echoed his feelings, making the whole thing feel hollow and pointless. That's when Victor decided to visit every reality, appear to each version of Jace as a mysterious mage, give each a rune, and set them on a mission to stop every version of Victor from completing his dark vision. You might be wondering why this more self-aware version of Victor didn't just wipe out every other version of himself. Well, there's two reasons for that. First, Victor couldn't bring himself to kill every version of himself, and second, he believes in free will. If the people of a certain reality wanted to elevate a version of Victor to godlike status, who was he to stop them? Coming back to the Victor and Jace we've been following, Victor was on the brink of turning Piltover into a dystopia, with everyone including Jace becoming part of his hive mind. That's when Echo, wielding the time-reversing rune, attacked Victor, giving Jace the chance to have a final heart-to-heart with his old friend. Jace then showed Victor what the mage version of himself had been doing across realities, and helped him understand that the pursuit of perfection wasn't worth the cost. Realizing his mistake, Victor then makes the choice to sever Piltover's connection with the Arcane, using Jace's rune. While this act seemingly erased the two friends from existence, it allowed all the robots to become inactive, and the warriors of Piltover and Zaun broke free from Victor's control, regaining their independence. Not only that, Victor's staff also crumbled to dust, but that does not mean that Arcane was done breaking our hearts. In the final moments of Season 2, chaos unfolds atop the crumbling Hexgate Tower, as Vi, Jinx, and what seems to be a lifeless Warwick are scattered across the wreckage. Jinx is perched precariously on a steel beam above, while Vi and Warwick find themselves on another nearby beam. As Vi and Jinx struggle to their feet, Vi looks down at the creature that was once their surrogate father, Vander. Sensing that Vi is about to make the same attempt to save him again, Jinx desperately urges her sister to let go and move to a safer spot, but Vi ignores her and reaches out to Vander. In that moment, the beast stirs and turns on Vi, lashing out in violent rage. As Warwick continues to attack, each strike weakens the beam Vi was standing on, so without any choice, Jinx leaps from her girder and slams into Warwick, sending them both tumbling off the beam that Vi is clinging to. Desperate to save her sister, Vi reaches out and grabs Jinx's hand using her Hextech gauntlet to pull her up to safety. But then Warwick grabs Jinx by the waist, and with the combined weight of the two of them, Vi can either save herself or risk them all falling together. Jinx, understanding that Vi refuses to let her go, accepts the inevitable and whispers a heart-wrenching goodbye before pulling the Hextech gemstone from Vi's gauntlet, deactivating it, and releasing both her and Warwick. As they plummet toward what seems like certain death, Jinx pulls out the Hextech gemstone bomb that she planned to use on herself earlier. With a final pull of the pin, the explosion tears through the air, and from Vi's perspective, it appears to be the end for them both. The heartbroken sister watches in helpless agony as the blast consumes Jinx and Warwick. Now, it might seem like Jinx is definitely gone after that explosion, but in the final moments of Episode 9, we see Caitlyn going through Kiraman family archives. While scanning through the documents, she comes across Hexgate's construction plans, and notices a set of cooling tunnels branching off from the building. When a smile spreads across Caitlyn's face, it seems that she believes Jinx may have used one of these tunnels to survive the blast. And honestly, there's more that hints she might be right. It's the ultimate rule of television: don't assume a death until you see the body. Arcane ends as both the people of Zaun and Piltover come together to honor the lives lost in the battle against Ambessa and Victor, while Echo was seen sitting in the same spot where he had once shared a moment with an alternate version of Jinx from another reality. Savika made her way onto the Piltover High Council, much to the disapproval of some of the older officials. On the other hand, Singed was reunited with his daughter. Meanwhile, the three-eyed raven from the Black Rose Order's temple seemed to take a piece of gemstone before joining Mel Medarda, who was likely headed to Noxus. And finally, Vi and Caitlyn are back together for good, ready for whatever new adventures awaited them. Now, even if Netflix, Fortiche, and Riot Games have stated that this is the final season of Arcane, we're living in a time where sequels and spin-offs are never too far behind. Plus, there are several hints of a continuation of the show in some way, so what do you guys think? Will we see more of this lore? Let us know about your thoughts and theories in the comment box below.